let's in fact go across to our guests. Mr. Saroj Damania as well as Mr. Devesh Agarwal join us on the broadcast for their views on this. Mr. Damania, coming to you first. The moot question, the central question here is that the crew on board Air India at the time that this incident happened decided to in fact arbitrate by bringing the victim and the accused together and try to in fact mediate and bring about some kind of a resolution. Now, after an alleged incident of this nature has taken place, does the airline have any authority to mediate? Did they overstep their own boundaries when it comes to this particular matter, and should they be held accountable?
See, as per what the law stands, there is a law of handling of unruly passengers.
Okay.
Now, in such a situation, if there is any unruly passenger who has misbehaved or who is categorized as an unruly passenger who is not behaving properly, is first and foremost supposed to be segregated from the other passengers.
Right.
And the captain has to see to it that the other passengers, after the complaint is raised or after the alarm is raised, should not be troubled further. But in this case, what we have seen is the unruly passenger was not only given a free hand by the crew and the pilot, but of course after landing also he was allowed to go scot-free. So he has traveled from Delhi to Bombay. He has even gone out of the jurisdiction of the Delhi police. Now the Delhi police are coming to Bombay, of course, and trying to track the accused, but of course he's gone absconding.
Okay.
And of course, having this accused absconding is, I think, the prime responsibility. The Air India crew should have immediately handed over the passenger to the airline security upon landing, and they should have handed him over to the CIF or the police who are responsible at the airport to be taken into custody and assist the passenger to file a FIR.
Okay.
Or they themselves, as per the carriage by air rules, or as per section 20.
Okay, Mr. Damani, I just have to interrupt you because we're getting some phone calls as well. Let me in fact go across to Mr. Richard joining us from Atlanta in the United States. Yes, Mr. Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, I was really surprised to see this here. These not like this. The other kind of incidents do happen. If you look at the reports before, few days ago, this thing happened, similar thing had happened where the customer has misbehaved with the other customer. The pilot immediately landed to the next station called FAA. Then the police came and they escorted him.
Okay.
That should have been done, whatever this pilot should have done the same thing, and then he should have given a upgraded seat to the passenger. I mean, this way, not only the passenger insulted the lady, the Air India themselves have insulted the lady.
Okay, that's a valid point. Should he have been handed over to the CISF immediately upon landing, and should the passenger have been isolated? That's a very pertinent question. We're also getting some more phone calls coming in, and we have Mr. Chandrasekhar joining us as well. Yes, Mr. Chandrasekhar, please go ahead. Right, let me in fact go across to Mr. Ranganathan now, joining us from Chennai. Yes, Mr. Ranganathan. Well, we can't hear him, but let's in fact go across to Mr. Venkatraman from Hyderabad. Right, let's in fact take this across to our guests. Mr. Agarwal is also with us. Mr. Agarwal, several lapses on the part of Air India now being brought to light. But do you believe that they exceeded their powers by seeking to mediate between the victim and the alleged persecutor in this particular case at a time when the victim had already said she felt extremely uncomfortable being brought before the accused at the time that this mediation was being attempted on the part of the crew?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm sorry I didn't, your audio is a little muffled where I am, okay. So I'm going to try and interpret your question. But just a couple of things, if I may be permitted. Yes, you are very correct that the crew has failed on multiple levels. Of course, what Mr. Damania said, there is, in fact, under the Aircraft Rules 1937, which basically governs civil aviation operations, there's a set of rules, Rule 22 and Rule 23, which specifically even, in fact, bypasses the Indian Penal Code and allows, air crew to report the matter and make sure that an offender gets punished. And also India is a signatory to what's called the Tokyo Convention of 1975, which clearly defines, the roles of a commander, the roles of a crew. There is, in fact, various operating manuals which have a clear set of incident escalations that, what happens if a passenger is verbally abusive, doesn't listen to commands. Like that's a category 1, a category 2, category 3 becomes, the person is physically active, is insults, assaults, etc., to all the way to the point where it empowers a commander of an aircraft. Essentially, like the full power of the aircraft is invested in the commander of the aircraft under the Tokyo Convention. The commander can even divert to a foreign airport or any airport, and the cost of diversion, at least in the UK, can be recovered from the passenger. There's a classic case. You see, the question is, in India, what are we doing? There are cases back in 2009 on the same route, not quite. It was, I think, New York to Mumbai. Again, an Air India aircraft. A person got drunk. He assaulted the air crew. This is back in 2009, January. He assaulted the air crew. And guess what? He was subject to a fine of 1,200 rupees. It's a joke.
Yes.
You can't have this level of thing. In comparison, Kingfisher Airlines to London, somewhere in 2008, I think.
Okay, so what you're emphasizing, Mr. Agarwal, is the fact that there are certain rules exist that even bypass the IPC in terms of action that can be taken. Priya, my colleague, has some more details about this. Yes, Priya.
Right. For the first time, we are getting the viewers the full complaint that was filed by that 70-year-old woman who has perhaps been traumatized forever by the experience that she had on the aircraft. And let me tell my viewers once again some of the horrific details that are coming out from this complaint. She says that I was in an Air India business class flight from JFK to New Delhi on the 26th of November. During the course of the flight, when the lights were switched off, a male business class passenger walked to my seat completely inebriated, which is the first violation in this case, because there is only a limit up to which the passengers are allowed to be served alcohol. He unzipped his pants and urinated on me and kept standing there until a person next to me tapped him and told him to go back to his seat. One wonders, where was the airline crew when this was happening? At which point he staggered back. He got up. I then got up, notified the stewardess what had happened. My shoes, clothes, bags were soaked in urine. The flight staff refused to touch them. At no point should one forget that this is a 70-year-old woman that we are talking about. The flight staff is there to assist. They did not do that. Further on, she goes on in the complaint and says that I asked the staff for a change of seat, but I was told there were no other seats available. However, this seems to be false, because just a moment later, another business class passenger tells the woman that there were seats available in the first class. What was the reason? Why didn't any of the crew on the aircraft come to the rescue of this woman is inexplicable, which is also why they should face more stringent action and punishment. Then here, she had been standing for 20 minutes. 20 minutes after the pilot had vetoed giving me a seat in first class. This is an airline, this is an aircraft. She is standing inside an aircraft after having her clothes being soiled by a co-passenger. I was then asked to return to the initial soiled seat. Even now, she's not been upgraded, given another seat. Only after a long while was she offered a seat by a stewardess. In the meantime, one of the senior flight staff came to me and asked me how I wanted to handle the situation. What kind of a question is that? How would the woman want to handle the situation? It is the crew who should decide how the situation should be handled. There are special trainings that are imparted to the flight crew as to how to handle situations like this on air when an unruly passenger tries to take safety and security in its hands. Remember, this could have been any kind of threat. This man could have indulged in physical violence as well. These are the questions that we are now asking on Times Now, Siddharth. Why is the Air India, the DGCA, the Aviation Ministry, none of them acting against their own crew? Forget about the man. The man has indulged in activities that are punishable under sections of IPC. Now that a complaint has been filed, probably law will take its own course, but why have all these bodies been sleeping for so long?
Absolutely. Pertinent questions, Priya, and you've taken us through the contents of that scathing letter and that complaint. Once again, let me in fact also go across to my colleague Arunil Sadadekar, who's been tracking the investigations on the ground. Arunil, several questions now being asked on the part of Air India. First and foremost, in terms of the kind of delay that this entire complaint process has in fact been through before a FIR was finally registered, and now also the police unable to perhaps trace the perpetrator in this case.
Well, that is right. In fact, we are understanding that the Delhi police is going to investigate Air India's top bosses as well. So the crew members will also be investigated. They will be asked thoroughly about it, because as Priya was also pointing out, why there was a delay of 1.5 months and why it required a heart-wrenching, emotionally written letter from this senior citizen lady, again going through that horrifying experience while explaining the things that happened with her in that flight to the top bosses of Tata's. Why didn't Air India take immediate action? Why wasn't the accused in this case, Mr. Shekhar Mishra, was apprehended at the airport only or in the flight itself? All these baffling questions clearly come to the fore, and we basically visited the house of Mr. Shekhar Mishra as well, at least the house that has been mentioned in his passport. Okay. The Delhi police had gone over there. They spoke to the locals. We spoke to one of the neighbors. They have been saying that since more than 2 years they haven't seen the person over here. Now, whether he gave a wrong address in his passport or he failed to change the address in his passport, all these questions clearly come to the fore. Also, we understand that Air India has communicated with the DGCA, basically saying that they have refunded the airfare of the senior citizen lady, and they didn't take action because they thought that the matter was sorted out between the senior citizen lady and the accused in this case. But nothing can justify what the kind of inaction that has been seen from Air India over here. This was a completely horrifying act, and the lady basically is writing everything in the complaint letter. Then why did Air India did not take any action immediately at the airport?
Can that mediation that they sought to in fact engineer during the course of the flight between the victim and the accused in this case, can that be considered as tantamount to sorting out the issue? That's the central question here. Let me in fact go across to some callers as well. Mr. Gopal Krishna from Bengaluru is on the line with us. Yes, Mr. Gopal Krishna.
Yes. I think the crew and the captain are totally to be blamed, because there are criminals, drunkards, and such kind of people. It is the crew staff. I am sure there are guidelines as to what to do, and then the staff and the captain have to be suspended. This guy, of course, has to go to jail or whatever is the thing. It's totally the crew and the captain.
Okay.
Let's not divert the focus on who is at fault.
Yes, Mr. Gopal Krishna, thank you. We'll of course await the investigations on the part of the police, as well as whether or not any internal action and accountability sought with respect to the conduct of the crew of Air India and their officials as well. We'll slip into